the November issue of Unfinished Business Television. I know I sound perky, but if I get tired later, forgive me because I'm a little under the weather right now. And I have just come from seeing. First, let me introduce myself. Hello, I am Jeff Galashaw, your host, and with me as always is Andre Joseph. Wakanda Forever, as you can see from the t-shirt. Obviously, we're going to talk about that a little later. But also, I just came from, well, not just, but last night I went to the Quentin Tarantino book tour for his new movie, Cinema Speculation, which, of course, I highly recommend. I haven't finished it yet, and he read us the first chapter there where you got a free book with a purchase of your ticket. But it was certainly an evening. Elvis Mitchell did the interview to begin with, and then the second half is him reading the first chapter, where there were some revelations, and it was like, damn, he made some revelations last night, and already it's on like the news sites. And I'm just like, either somebody was a snitch or there was a plant in there. But yes, it was like a religious experience. I was probably one of the few Black people in the room, which was interesting because he talked a lot about Black cinema and like, you know, growing up around like Black people and always going to Black movie theaters. So that was very interesting. Another thing that was interesting is how much of the audience, even before the show, I could hear them talking about films and how much they knew. But then when he started referencing all these like movies from the 70s, 80s, and even like 90s, he'd be like, who saw that movie? And it would be like very little clapping. And I'm like the only one like raising my hand, like, I did. I saw Where's Papa? You know, and because because the first chapter he talks about going to see Where's Papa. And nobody in the room had seen it. It seemed like, so it was just like, wow. Nobody's here seeing 1900 by Bernardo Bertolucci? Mm-hmm. And it was like, ooh, this is a tough crowd. I was just sitting there like, okay, I know the feeling. It's like, I don't know. Do you listen to Dr. Dre and Eminem?
Yeah, of course.
Remember the song Guilty Conscience, where he's like, haven't you ever seen that one movie, kids? And and Eminem's like, no, but I've seen that porn with Funk Dubious. That was the crowd, practically, because it's like I've seen that movie. So yeah, it was really a great evening for film fans. But let's get back on topic. Andre, how are you, by the way?
I'm doing good, getting ready for the holidays and Turkey Day, and you know, after Wakanda Forever, which we'll talk about later. There really isn't a whole lot left this year other than maybe a couple of indie films for me to see.
Any interest in seeing Meet the Fableman, Steven Spielberg's personal project?
Yeah, I'm going to go check that out. I was just watching a 60 Minutes interview with him talking about the inspiration from his parents and obviously the parallels with his life and I guess, you know, sort of the parental trauma he had growing up. So it'll be interesting to see him do really, I guess, his magnum opus that he's been waiting 60 years to produce.
Yeah, I'm shocked that also he's like, it's like this little known secret. By the way, Seth Rogen's in this movie, but he's like the biggest name almost on the poster. That and, you know, the David Lynch having a role in the movie, which I know which role he's playing, but I haven't seen the movie yet, but I know.
Apparently he agreed to do it in exchange for Cheetos.
That's very David Lynch. Yeah. You know, I would have maybe gone higher, like, okay, you got to appear in one of my movies or produce my next one. You know,
well, remember, Spielberg at one time was going to direct a Twin Peaks episode, but he was working on Hook, so that didn't work out.
You know what? I would have rather the Twin Peaks episode than Hook. I didn't grow up with Hook. Sorry, guys.
I love Hook, personally, for me, but I get the hate.
I don't hate the movie, but if you give me a Steven Spielberg episode of Twin Peaks versus Hook, I'm going with the Twin Peaks episode. I'm sorry. Even if it's the most mundane episode, I'm just like, Steven Spielberg was in the world of David Lynch, at least for a week. Mm-hmm. That is a book in of itself. And That's like my next fantasy novel I ever write. That, and then the sequel will be his experiences working on Meet the Fable or the Fablemans. I don't know why I keep calling it Meet the Fablemans. It's the title.
It's just the Fablemans.
I know, but I keep calling Meet the Fablemans. Like Meet the. I think it's because it reminds me of Meet the Feebles in title.
I was gonna say Meet the.
Because I'm like, why do I keep saying meat? But also, well, at least for me, another movie I do want to see that's coming out before the end of the year. I want to see, I think it's The Menu with Ray Fiennes.
Me too. That looks good.
Yeah, that. But past Thanksgiving, it's like, I know there's other movies coming out, but I can't really remember. Like, they're not that memorable for me to be like, I have to see that in theaters.
Well, there's the Harvey Weinstein movie. What was it, The Talk or whatever it's called?
That seems, but see, I know it's based on a bestseller. That to me is something I could read, or I can wait. I hate to say it, wait for streaming. But I mean, I have an interest. If I have the time, I check that out. But like I said, like the only other movie I remember that might be coming out this year is that Tom Hanks remake of a foreign film, Man Called Ove.
Oh yeah, he's like the angriest person ever, which I never accept.
Well, it just feels like, remember how, no offense to Spielberg and Hanks, but how The Terminal just felt like a sitcom movie?
Yeah.
That's the way that trailer is coming off. Like, oh, this would make a great one-season show, rather than this is going to be a great cinematic experience.
Well, he thought Larry Crown was going to be a cinematic experience, and it was like watching paint dry.
I just wonder if Hanks, since he's done so many movies, television is new to him. So when he writes stuff, he's like, you know what? I'll write this. And it's like, this is a television series you keep writing starring you.
Yeah, Bosom Buddies was 40 years ago.
Well, I mean, hey, Bosom Buddies is still kick-ass. Okay, it's serviceable. Kick-ass theme song by Billy Joel, though. So let's get into news. Not that much news this week, but, some big happenings. James Gunn, director of Guardians of the Galaxy movies, amongst others, and Super, has now been, he is going to co-chair DC Films, pretty much, with producer Peter Safran or Sarafan?
Peter Safran.
Okay. Which is an interesting development because I know James Gunn is a comic book fan, and he's made so much for Marvel, but now he's more in the creative league. But I'm wondering if this is to take over from the visually stunning but kind of humorless Zack Snyder kind of DC universe and try to make the films a little bit more playful, which would more fit DC as a comic book brand. Because, Marvel's always been the one that was more cutting edge, but DC was always the kind of tried and true, but maybe sometimes a little more goofy with their comic book titles. And this kind of, his type of humor kind of fits more those types of movies, or at least his vision for those movies, as long as it's not as dark as Super. How are you feeling about this as maybe the bigger comic book fan out of the two of us?
I'm very optimistic that Gunn and Safran are going to right the ship over at DC because, like I said, Marvel needs a kick in the ass right now, going way too far with the humor in their last couple of movies, outside one we'll review later. And I feel that Gunn, yes, he has a very offbeat, kind of quirky style that we saw in the Suicide Squad, and of course Peacemaker, which was a huge hit for HBO Max. But he has a very deep knowledge of the lore of comic books in general. Like, nobody could have done Guardians of the Galaxy the way he did. He understood who those characters were just from reading those classic Stan Lee, Jack Kirby comic books. And in this case, like you saw in Suicide Squad, digging into characters like Peacemaker and others, I mean, he gets it. So, there's definitely going to be the effort to make Superman relevant again, try to not have multiple Batmans and multiple Flashes and, kind of keep it narrow to a certain scope, but then have like those little unknown characters that haven't made the screen yet get their moment to shine and not just make it like, oh, this character's going to get a movie, that character's going to get an HBO Max show. I think they're going to try to basically restart DC without having to restart the entire story. Like this is like a whole new chapter where we've bypassed the origins. This is the direction we're taking to build to, I guess, another Justice League or something to that sort. And just a more unified vision, which they need right now. Now they could screw it up because they've tried it before under Jeff Johns, John Berg, then with Walter Hamada, and they just kept mixing and matching because they don't have a Kevin Feige. But having a business guy like Safran alongside a creative like Gunn, there's a good chance maybe the two of them together will be able to create the right course for the DC brand.
I agree, and I think it's obvious that maybe James Gunn had a more pleasurable experience making Suicide Squad with DC than he obviously had making, Guardians of the Galaxy with Marvel. Maybe he felt a little more caged in there, whereas with DC, they were fostering his ideas like, yeah, do whatever you want, just make it successful,
Well, I feel like he put his stamp on the Guardians movies, but you can only go to a certain point before they say, you're staring off the course. We got to stick to one plan and not stray too far. And I mean, he was really supposed to be the architect for Phase 4 from Marvel until that infamous tweet storm that caused him to get booted and then come back. But no, I think he's closing a chapter on Guardians with the holiday special and the third movie next year. I think it's sort of like in wrestling, there's a guy named Vince Russo who worked for WWE when they had their popularity with the Attitude Era, and this is when WCW was starting to like lose course. So he got to a point where he said, look, I did what I did for WWE. I steered the ship right. I want to go to this other company that's dying and try to steer their ship right, which didn't work out, but that's the comparison I think of when it comes to James Gunn.
Okay. Well, hopefully, can't do too much worse with DC. So not that they're all horrible or anything, but
Black Adam was promising, but we'll talk about that another day.
Okay, I was about to say, I just think they need a shot in the arm in another direction. That's as far as I'm gonna go. Next we have Warner Brothers in their crumblings. They have finally decided, hey, you know what? Nobody seems to like these Fantastic Beasts movies. Maybe we should stop making them. So they apparently are. I'm sure a certain star of that movie ain't helping. So now they really want to make the Broadway show Harry Potter, the Cursed Child into a 2-part movie. I take it probably bringing the whole cast back together. But J.K. Rowling, who also wrote the play, has not signed up yet for this. It's interesting because, of course, J.K. Rowling and her stance on trans people and even writing essays about her stance on it. And most of the cast has obviously spoken against her and her feelings. So I can only imagine trying to get this production together. There's going to be very different political feelings in this. And also, no offense, it just does feel kind of like a cash cow more than anything that organically is needed. Because I know there were rumors of them wanting to start doing Harry Potter films all over again, rebooting them. And I'm just like, as like with Spider-Man or anything, can we like get a breath first? Like, if you're going to make it for another generation, but not the immediate next generation. You know what I mean? I don't really need, the movie, the 2-part movie. And I am a Harry Potter fan. I have read all of the books, So I love Harry Potter and the books. I don't obviously agree with J.K. Rowling's political or her politics, at least as far as that, when it comes to trans people. So, I mean, this isn't a really big news story, like hitting me hard. I just thought I'd bring it up because it was in the news. Like I said, do it or not, I'm not really caring. I'll just stick to reading the books. How are you feeling about this news story?
I don't have too much to say. I think that the Fantastic Beasts movies were kind of even more of a cash cow than this musical
Yes.
that they wanted to do. Because even my friends who were bigger Harry Potter fans than me were just like, I mean, these books were just like, I guess, technical books. You know, like you have Lego and then there's Lego Technics. This is like Lego Technics. There's no story really. And so that they kind of lost track with that and nobody's really interested in it. I don't see the point in continuing Harry Potter. You got some solid films. They made some good stars out of Daniel Radcliffe and Emma Watson and the others. Kids can obviously go back to them at any time. There's no reason to continue with this or to try to reboot just for the sake of rebooting. Hasn't Warner Brothers learned their lesson in the past year with Space Jam and Matrix that waiting as long as you do to try to cash in on these old 90s properties is not the right way to go to build your studio?
Well, this goes into a bigger discussion. I was trying to wait for when we talked about trailers, but because one of the trailers does this successfully, but I'm not a fan of world building. You know, I appreciate it when it's organic, or you can go at, you have like a popular property, and then you can continue it, but keep world building in an interesting way that makes sense. You know, but like with, let's say, The Walking Dead, for instance, we do not need 50 spin-offs to build more of this zombie world and the inhabitants of it. It works as a comic book series because then we can follow different characters and their arcs having to live in this world. But that's not a satisfying television show without, again, it feeling like you're only doing this for money, you know? And I understand Hollywood is a business. But if you're going to at least continue, give the audience some kind of different perspective so that it's worth it. It's just like, I admit I haven't watched the prequel to Game of Thrones, but I was fine with just Game of Thrones. I didn't need to know what came hundreds of years before it, or even with this new Lord of the Rings spinoff.
I was going to say, what's the point with Lord of the Rings when you have the three films, The Hobbit, which nobody was really that big into? They kind of botched that. One movie too much. And I don't give a shit about, Rings of Power. I don't get the point. I don't know why it fits, or, it's just, it's too much. You don't need it.
Exactly. You get tired of the franchise, even though, of course, it's going to still make money. But, like Breaking Bad is a perfect example. We had Breaking Bad. We took one character from it, showed their past. We could slowly bring in other characters to show the younger or before Breaking Bad versions of them. But it wasn't dependent all on them. We were still telling one character story, his before and his after, so to speak. And, well, John Wick, that's another movie, but I'll get more into that when we talk about that trailer. But the worst example is Fast and the Furious. That's not world building. That is, where are they going to go this time? And playing with timelines so that characters we saw die in other movies somehow can miraculously come back. And it's just like,
eventually there will be time travel and dinosaurs in the Fast and the Furious. Mark my
I don't doubt it. We're gonna see some movie where we got to get out of this. We got to get out of the prehistoric era. Even though our cars are running, we're using fossil fuel, but that doesn't exist yet. So somehow we gotta. It's that stupid at this point.
Yeah, if Vin Diesel has his way, he'll cross it over with Riddick.
No, even I'm like thinking. No, I still wouldn't want to see it because it's just like that series, like Pitch Black, great movie. I can understand the sequel, Chronicles of Riddick. We want to discover this world, but the problem with Chronicles of Riddick was we got too much into this world where it's like, wait, none of this matches any of the spare, easy, futuristic original Pitch Black, So it's just like, no. And I'm not saying don't be creative and expand the universe if you have a viable property, but I'm just saying at least go at it a different way or make it connect in a way that it just doesn't seem like this was a financial decision rather than a creative one. That's all I'm saying. So going on to Cash Cows, Margot Robbie's Pirates of the Caribbean all-female spinoff movie got canceled. Also, the rumor is because either they're going to try and reboot Pirates of the Caribbean with Johnny Depp, or they're just going to reboot it in general. And I wasn't looking forward to this. I mean, hey, I'd love an all-female pirate movie, but why does it have to be Pirates of the Caribbean? Again, can't we just start something original? I understand maybe the Pirates of the Caribbean name puts butts in seat a little more, but again, I just rather see an all-female pirate movie. And if it's good enough, it will make the money or it will find its audience. Again, maybe I live in a dream world, but at least that's what I'd like to think. How are you feeling about this cash cow getting canceled?
I look at it in two ways. So there's obviously a lot of Johnny Depp fans out there, and
Mm-hmm.
it's obvious, even though like the last few pirate movies weren't all that great, there's no denying the fact that Jack Sparrow is an icon, and it's very hard to continue this franchise without him. If you made it about Orlando Bloom or anybody else, and I'm not talking about like, hey, it's got to be about the women, it's not going to work as well. They were even talking at one point about giving Keira Knightley a Disney Plus show. Who's going to want to watch that? So you can't do Pirates without Jack Sparrow, and you can't do Jack Sparrow without Johnny Depp. At the same time, I just am a little tired of Margot Robbie being considered for like every reboot, like we're gonna gender swap a character deal, because like they have this Ocean's 11 prequel that she's supposed to headline, and the list goes on and on. It's like, look, the girl is talented. I think she was fantastic as Harley Quinn in both Suicide Squad movies. I thought she was fantastic in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. But give her some original stuff she can make her own mark in. Why does she have to, okay, be this talented star, but then have to do everything that Hollywood says, oh, reboot this, cast her as that? Let this girl build her own legacy and not piggyback on something that's already established.
Well, it's nice to see maybe she's trying to break out of the Michael B. Jordan mode. I must make a sequel or be in any other property I had my name in.
He has the same problem, and I'm almost fearing Jonathan Majors is heading in that direction.
He seems more like a journeyman actor, I'm hoping. Hey, checks are nice. Big checks are nicer. Next, Alan Hughes found work of the Hughes brothers, who I think is an excellent director and definitely a great visualist when it comes to films like The Book of Eli, our favorite over here, Dead Presidents, Menace to Society, even From Hell had its moments. But he is in talks to direct a biofilm of Snoop D-O Double G. Interesting pairing. Obviously, it's going to be better than All Eyes on Me, the Tupac story, even though I feel like Tupac probably had maybe a little bit more meat to his story than Snoop, because this could be another, straight out of Compton, and whoever is cast as Snoop Dogg, I'm for Lakeith Stanfield.
I agree with that point.
I think it could be a star-making role. But again, it all depends. Is this going to be drama, or are we going to match Snoop's personality as Uncle Snoop and be a little bit more laid back, maybe comedic take, maybe even a Weird Al take on the material, which would be interesting. Depending where it goes, I'll admit I am, with Alan Hughes directed, I am more interested in the project than I would be if somebody just said, hey, we have a Snoop Dogg biofilm project. And I like Snoop Dogg. I might not love every album he came out with, but I like the man, as far as I know of him. And I like, his music, and I like some of his movies, Bones, and had his moments. We watched, Day Shift with him.
Yeah, which I still want to spin off of his character.
Yeah, because him and the the vampire slaying brothers were the only interesting things in the movie. And that's why his character, spoiler, survives. So we'll keep our eyes open for that project. And to end the news, we have some bad news. Kevin Conroy, voice actor of Batman from Batman the Animated Series, passed away recently. And, that's a huge loss. I'm a fan of the animated series, Batman in general, but the animated series was more the show that brung the hero home, so to speak, for all the seasons it was on television. Where I would come home every day, watch it, and that will always be kind of my favorite version of Batman. That voice will always be associated with that character more than anybody. And I mean, no offense to the actors who played him in the movie, but he, to me, the animated version is always the more memorable out of all of them. How are you feeling about Kevin Conroy's passing?
Yeah, I was shocked when I heard, and I'd seen pictures of him where he looked like he might have been a little bit sick. But again, just like with Chadwick Boseman, didn't question it. I think you said it all. I mean, it was a part of my childhood watching that show. Mask of the Phantasm in the movie theater. And when you think of the sound of Batman, I mean, Keaton's great, and then everybody else is give or take. There's Bale with the horrible voice he had, and then Affleck got the voice enhancement there. Pattinson was okay, but no doubt Kevin Conroy defined the sound of Batman to the point where it didn't just extend to just that show, but to like Batman Beyond and the Justice League cartoon, the Arkham Asylum video games. He even did some of the one-off specials like The Killing Joke that went straight to video. So anytime you heard he was going to be doing the voice, it was like, okay, I'm in. I want to see this. If it's anybody else, no offense, they just don't hold a candle to that guy. And he really did have an appreciation for the character, for the fans. He was a huge humanitarian, which I didn't know. Like, he fed homeless people during 9/11, and just taking time out every day, even for like sick kids, to visit them and do the Batman voice. So he probably embraced it more than any other actor who ever played it in live action. And that's going to be a missed thing in any animated form going forward with Batman.
Exactly. So, rest in peace, Kevin Conroy.
Yeah.
And next, we are on to trailers. And, not too many this week. So, folks, we're almost there at the reviews. We have the Whitney Houston biofilm, I Want to Dance with Somebody. Obviously, they're going with the family side. This looks very cookie cutter. I don't know, since it's not really shown in the trailer is more of a greatest hits, of her life compilation. They're not showing any of the darkness that we unfortunately all know about her life. So it's interesting to see how they're going to tackle it. Like I said, the trailer looks okay. The big part of the trailer seems to be showing her singing the national anthem at the Super Bowl. I have my feelings of Whitney Houston, who, of course, I grew up listening to. So, good and bad when it comes to her. I think she was a good person at heart, maybe in pain with problems that we don't all know about. So there was obviously something haunting her. But, I mean, I like the movie. I mean, I like the trailer of the movie. I didn't see it yet. But I don't know. I mean, Stanley Tucci does look like,
yeah, he does.
What's his
Clive
name?
Davis.
Clive Davis. I'm wondering if Clive Davis is also a producer of the movie, since he seems to play heavily into at least as far as the trailer goes.
Well, it was approved by the estate, so I think he has some involvement.
Yeah. Maybe that aspect I might be a little about, because then I'm wondering, is it going to be like Ray with his producer? Is it going to be like, oh, we're best buddies up until, So I'm just wondering. But I mean, I'll probably go to see it because I'm sure family members will want to go see it, and I'll go with them to see it. But this is it. It's not screaming, I have to see this in theaters. How do you feel about the trailer?
It doesn't look like it's anything groundbreaking to me. I mean, I kept getting the vibes of Respect, the Aretha Franklin movie with Jennifer Hudson. It just seemed like it was the same beat for beat. The discovery of this star, finding her voice, then the backlash from the Black community. We get the glimpse of Bobby Brown, which I don't think Ashton Andrews looks anything like Bobby Brown, even with the wig. And, it just, I guess because we know the story and we know all of the secrets that have come out over the years, the relationship with Robin Crawford, and the stuff that was discussed in both the Nick Bloomfield documentary as well as the one that Kevin McDonald did. It's like
Hmm.
I don't feel like you're going to get anything new. And I got to be honest, my view of her kind of got a little skewed by the Bobby Brown TV movie on BET, which kind of depicted her in a very negative light, even though it's
Yes.
tragic what happened. But um I'm obviously gonna go see it. I don't know if I'll see it in the theater. Sure, my mom will probably wait for it on video. But it looks like it's paint by numbers. I don't see anything like that's going to be earth shaking to watch. Maybe more for young people that never really knew her
Yeah.
story and only discovered her music now. They might be into it, but I don't think it's going to be like a Ray type of film or anything like that.
Okay. Next, we have Senior, or SR, Robert Downey Jr.'s documentary on his father, Robert Downey Sr. This one, I believe, is going straight to Netflix, not making it to theaters, or maybe in theaters for a week before going to Netflix. I'm interested because Robert Downey Sr. has always been of interest to me. I have seen, I'll admit, I'm just as bad. I haven't seen a lot of his movies. I've seen Putney Swope.
Me too.
Trying to think of others. I'm sure I think I saw Hugo Pool, and I've seen a few of them, but probably more the later career movies than the early career movies. And he certainly is a character. Some of you might remember him from Boogie Nights, where he played the producer who was like, "That's a YP, not an MP. Your problem, not my problem." And it's interesting to see, the dynamic between the father and son, because Robert Downey Jr., while being a great actor, seems to be very energetic and theatrical in general. So it's interesting to see where he comes from. His father's certainly a character, but doesn't seem as energetic or just improv-y as Robert Downey Jr. And it's one of the few times I think in a while we've ever seen Robert Downey Jr. be emotional, because especially when he realizes his father's getting older, might be getting sick, and might be on his way out, and coming to grips with, his feelings towards him, and maybe things he felt maybe were failures or things they didn't connect on. So I'm very interested to see this film because it kind of reminds me of, like, recently I watched Stutz, Jonah Hill's documentary on his therapist, and where he reveals some of, the drama in his personal life he's been going through. So it's interesting when you have more of a personal perspective, but it's more of an insider perspective, because it reminds me of what the problem with some documentaries are, where it's supposed to be about the subject, but then it becomes more about the director, sort of, or how they're going to make the film, like the Amazing Jonathan documentary, where I guess it was kind of needed, but I still would have liked just the story on the Amazing Jonathan, not so much the personal, what you're going through, which only, again, makes sense. I understand there's a relationship between director and subject when you're making a documentary, but again, it doesn't always need to be purely about the director and their journey. Sometimes we just want to watch these on the subject. Like, even though I don't love the serial killer documentaries on Netflix, none of them are like, well, here's how me as director I feel about this story that I'm making. That's what your interview is for after you make the movie. I shouldn't have to watch that as part of the documentary on the subject I'm supposed to be. Whereas for me, the Jonah Hills and the Robert Downey Jr.'s work, because again, it is so personal, and that is part of the documentary. Like Stutz is about him and therapy and the changes this therapist makes, not only for him, but can make for other people. And with Robert Downey Sr., it is a documentary about his father involved. Who else is going to get as close to him as that and knows personal details that, let's say, a camera crew and a director wouldn't get out of him? So that is why I feel like with this, I can stand him being part of it. Plus, let's face it, it gets more butts and seats to see, oh, Robert Downey Jr.'s here, so who hasn't made a movie in a while. So I'm excited to see it. I'll admit, I probably would go see it in theaters if it came out, but I'm excited to see it. How are you feeling about this documentary?
I'm excited for it too. I've seen Putney Swope. I remember his cameo in the movie Johnny Be Good, where he's the I guess the college recruiter. And there's the scene where he's in a drive-in theater and he sees the movie playing and he's like, "This movie is shit." So yeah, I mean, I definitely look forward to it. But I think I look forward to seeing the dynamic between him and his son in the later part of his life, because I know there's a lot of stories about, some of the drug use that they both did, especially RDJ when he was very young, and how that kind of contributed to a lot of the issues that he had that almost took his life. So I think to see some sense of closure, to see, like, I guess the back and forth of where their lives are, well, where he ended up and his father, at the end of his life. I'm really interested in that aspect of it more so than the directing career. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Okay. Next we have Glass Onion, a Knives Out sequel with Daniel Craig and another all-star cast stuck on an island trying to figure out a murder mystery. I'll admit, one of the biggest aspects of why I'm interested in it is because Edward Norton in kind of the Chris Evans role in this movie, though not as well dressed. But it's interesting just to see Edward Norton on the big screen again, especially, the stories they tell about his perfectionism. Yeah. And so I'm shocked, and in a comedy, no less. And like I said, I enjoyed the first one, so I have no problem with this one. But I'll admit, whereas Knives Out came out as more of a surprise because we didn't get the premise, we just knew it was a detective story and a mystery. This one seems a little bit more on point, like what to expect, but maybe that's part of the aspect of the movie is that they want you to come in with that mindset and then they're going to screw with you all over again. We'll see. But I'm excited to see it. And the trailer looks good. Not too much to say about it. How are you feeling about Glass Onion?
I'm definitely excited for Glass Onion. I like Knives Out a lot. I'm definitely getting the vibes of Death on the Nile, since this is kind of going in the Agatha Christie direction of movies with Daniel Craig. I think they didn't need to play up the fact that he's homosexual. I think that's pretty much just that's who he is, and that shouldn't be a big deal. I like the cast that they assembled. I like that it's kind of a tropical setting versus, someplace in New England in a mansion. Now it's just something a little bit more upscale. So yeah, and I like the idea that the murder or whatever is going to be the central premise, that everybody again has a reason for wanting to be involved and potentially kill this guy. Like they have some relation to this guy's past. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that plays out and hopefully, subvert expectations, which Rian Johnson knows how to do pretty well.
Yes. And for our final trailer, we talk about world building. John Wick 4, coming out in March. I am really looking forward to this. It also helps that cable has been showing all the John Wick movies over and over again. So it kind of reminds you like, yeah, this, I remember that. I want to see that. The trailer is again kick ass, even though you're wondering, when does this man sleep? When can he get rest? And he's taking out all these people. And it shows, Lawrence Fishburne, we're not seeing so much the tribunal or what was it? The accountant.
The Continental.
Yeah, we're not seeing that as much because, well, that's going to be a spinoff television series. I love anytime Ian McShane is on the screen. And I can't remember the character's name, though. Basically the concierge front desk person.
Yeah, Lance Reddick's character. I'm blanking on his name.
Yeah, we see Lawrence Fishburne still cut up, so obviously he's putting his bones in the game after like part 3 when he saved John. Here's my only problem with the movie. The ultimate villain, who's going to be the new head, and it's like, oh man, John's going to have to face the head. Who's going to be? Bill Skarsgård? Like, okay, he's tall. He can do that weird split eye thing. And I'm not saying he's a bad actor, but when I think of action badasses, I'm not like, oh yeah, this fight between Keanu and Bill Skarsgård, that's gonna be the shit. This is not Keanu versus, let's say, Common even. It's not that exciting. Or versus that Italian pussy from part 2. Like, if I was making this movie, this is where I'd go Expendables. I'd be like, give me Jean-Claude Van Damme, somebody of that stature, or even old ass Liam Neeson. Hey, he was Ra's al Ghul's front man in Batman. So I'm like, use the old man taking techniques. He can go up against John Wick and like, I've got a set of skills. Are you ready for these, John? Not some like young twerp. And okay, before I let you go, also, this is what I mean by world building. John Wick started off as one man versus a mob who killed his dog, but it's deeper than that, but that was basically the premise. So you could take it as like ridiculous, you could take it as emotional, or you could take it, oh, maybe this is a spoof of an action film while being one. But then part 2, we up the game. Now there's this whole fucking other world, old school world where you gotta pay back debt. Everything's paid for in gold doubloons, blood oaths, and it's like, whoa. And then at the end, and plays in a part 3, there's a whole fucking network where there's offices and files and like punk rock girls with tattoos dressed up in 50s gear that are the office, and like literally everybody's an assassin in New York and worldwide. And you got Halle Berry who used dogs, and it's like, oh snap, this is, I want to be in this, that is how you do it. That is world building. You keep making it more and more interesting and deep. So obviously I'm going to go see this movie. How do you feel about the John Wick 4 trailer and John Wick movies in general?
Oh, they're badass. I mean, I always have fun watching a John Wick movie, going back to that first film, which I went in it with low expectations. I was like, holy shit, this is fun. This is exciting. And this is not what you expected from the trailer. So yeah, they keep upping up the game, make it more violent, put more skills in there, get the best martial artists in the world to be part of these movies. So I definitely look forward to it. What I'm hoping, because they teased they're getting close to the end. This is not going to be the last film, but whether there's a 5th film, a 6th film, it seems like they're getting close to at least the Wick story coming to a close. And I'm just hoping and praying it's not going to be a twist like a certain film that ends where we find out the whole thing was a video game the entire time.
The infamous movie. I won't spoil that movie for people by saying the name of it, but I know which one. Here's a hint: it has Matthew McConaughey. But
and he really
also
likes fishing.
Exactly. But at least, well, they already have a spin-off movie coming, Ballerina, which I guess will focus on the school Angelica Houston runs for Assassin.
Ana de Armas.
Yes, so that might be enough for me to go see that one, because again, she was kick-ass in that James Bond movie. Mm-hmm. So that ends our news stories. So now everybody get ready, because it's time for the reviews. Okay, well, first and foremost, I think we should get the biggest movie on the list out of the way, which is Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. Again, directed by Ryan Coogler, co-written by Ryan Coogler with Joe Robert Cole. This continues the adventures of Wakanda after, okay, first of all, spoiler for all these movie reviews. After the passing of T'Challa, how is Wakanda going to continue on after his demise? And in the middle of this, also a new foe comes to the forefront, and Namor, and the winged god, in the comic books, but it's never mentioned that. Exactly. But look, this movie, I'm just gonna tell everyone, this movie is mostly about grief and dealing with the feelings the audience and obviously the cast and crew have with Chadwick Boseman, unfortunately, passing away. And, the loss felt and especially since obviously they're not going to recast the character. So, how do we go on? How do we continue? And that's basically what the movie deals with a lot, while also being, a Marvel movie, which I'll give the film credit. I feel like with that kind of storyline, this is what cuts it out of being one of these phase Marvel movies. This actually has a storyline that's relevant and not doesn't just feel like, oh, well, we've got to push this new villain so they can lead to the next film or the next development in Marvel, which I greatly appreciate. This film has its fair share of action scenes, and I'm going to say a lot of people love this movie. I can say I like the movie. I can't say I love it. I'm there for the emotional stuff. I think the action sequences are good, but after I saw Black Panther, I wanted to see it like 5 more times in theaters. After seeing this movie once, I would say is good enough for me to watch it in a theater. I'd watch it again probably on streaming or buy the DVD, but I can't say I'd watch it again because not only there's another major character who passes away in this film, and that's another big, huge blow, which reminds me of certain sequels in trilogies where the reason the second film is memorable is only because of the passing of a major character. And that's the only reason it's memorable. This is memorable for many other reasons, but I don't feel like it's as strong, obviously, as the first film. Because let's face it, this film was built kind of in a chaos of what do we do now? Because I know the original plan was to do if Chadwick Boseman had lived, the original plan was to do a movie about loss. Like the time loss of those 5 years being away when, Thanos' plan went through. And this one, it's like they create a good allegory with a Namor of the whole anger taking over against society. But again, it's also mixed in with this kind of solemn movie of everybody passing, I thought the bridge scene was excellent as an action sequence with Ironheart. And I'll admit, that was one of the parts of the movie that actually had me tearing up, because it was just so beautiful watching just all Black females in an action film, teaming together. And it's something that is missing from cinema. And, I thought Letitia Wright is good. Well, I mean, she's played Shuri before, but she hit all those right emotional notes. The nitpick, of course, is that she's so skinny, and even in the Black Panther suit, it's hard to believe half the action and that she's really landing blows to, Namor. Andre, what did you think of Wakanda Forever?
So I'm going to try to organize my thoughts as best as I can, and I'm kind of with you on the same wavelength with the movie. I liked it overall. On the plus side, Angela Bassett was fantastic.
Yes.
Phenomenal. I think she has a shot at an Oscar nomination. Namor was a total scene stealer, and I thought the actor they cast, who was not somebody that I would have expected, but he delivered in the part. Especially his intro scene where he takes out all those people on the sub was insanity. I thought he was amazing in every scene that he did. And I love the underwater scene when you see his city and just how beautiful it looked, the soundtrack that they put behind it. It was giving me Avatar vibes, but I'll get more into that part of it later. I like Winston Duke. I wish there was more of him as M'Baku. He always a scene stealer. And yeah, I mean, they handled Chadwick's loss really well. There were those times I didn't tear up in the whole film, but I felt the emotion deep down with the funeral scene, even the beginning with how they just are in such an emergency to try to save him and they can't do it. And then, of course, the very end, I won't spoil what happens, but I thought that was great. And then a certain cameo, which I won't spoil here, was unexpected, but I thought it was perfect because it completely was something that came way out of left field. Those are the things that I like. Now, here's my problems with this movie and why I'm with you, where it's like I've seen it once and I don't feel like I want to see it again. I felt that hole throughout the entire movie of not having T'Challa there. There were so many times where I was like, man, I wish he was still alive, that he could just do this, because that first film was an event. People stood online for that movie. It shattered all these expectations that Black movies can't sell, and just it changed the way people started to look at Marvel, right? This one didn't have that. And it just, there were those times where I'm like, they probably should have recast this role, only because you just, it doesn't feel right without T'Challa. You have this entire movie where we're focused on everybody else, but where's the star? Where's the one that's supposed to really bring it all together? So I just think that you could have found a good actor who could have still honored Chadwick, but then pushed the story forward, because no character in Marvel should just be defined by that one actor. I
Mhm.
mean, shit, they're recasting General Ross with
Thunderbolt
Harrison
Ross.
Ford after William Hurt died. Like, that doesn't seem right to me.
Okay.
So, but putting that aside, putting that issue aside, I think Letitia Wright, putting aside my own issues with her, if the anti-vax stuff is true or not, I know they're trying to downplay it, but let's put that aside for a second here.
Okay. Mm.
She did hit the right emotional notes at points. I will agree to that. You felt the loss. I don't think she's a leading actress or a leading actor, period. I did not feel like that character was built up well enough that when she puts on the suit that it's deserved. I think you needed somebody much more stronger to do that. And I'm not just talking about her physicality, I'm just talking in general. Like, it just didn't feel that she could carry the picture on her own. If Angela Bassett now, if she got in the suit, if they completely threw off all expectations and it's Ramona getting in the suit, I would be applauding in the theater. Like, yes, she is in great shape, and I would totally be behind her right away, because I could believe her being kick-ass, not this other girl, unfortunately. I would have even been okay with Dene Garcia, or I'm sorry, I can't pronounce her name. I would have been okay with her as the new Panther if that was the case. And Ironheart made no impression on me. I'm sorry. Maybe
Really?
no. I just, he felt like a stereotype to me at times. Maybe when she gets the show, they'll improve. But I was not into her character. I felt like she
Wow.
was kind of shoehorned in the way they shoehorned in America Chavez and Doctor Strange. I wasn't into that. And then the plot, which I understand, Namor's trying to protect his city from the surface world, not just because of vibranium, but just because of his own hatred towards them with how they treated his people. But I just kind of feel like when they took Shuri into the underwater city and she saw how beautiful it was and saw the parallels with Wakanda, you probably could have ended the movie right there. It's like, we don't need to fight these people. They're just like the aliens in Avatar. That they're not really harming anybody, but they just had to have an excuse to keep that war going, and it it could have been shorter. I don't think this needed to be 2.5 hours long.
No.
You could have made this maybe slightly a little over 120 minutes, but not almost to end game level.
Yeah, you could have cut
So
20 minutes. I can't tell you where, but you could have cut 20 minutes.
yeah, you could have easily cut 20 minutes. And I'm sorry, Julia Louise Dreyfus, Seinfeld, Elaine.
Really?
I
You
don't
didn't like
think
her?
I don't think you needed her here.
Well,
And I know that they were
storyline.
tied in with the politics and they wanted to get to the vibrant. I get all that, but we don't need her here. Just like I think it's weird casting to begin with, but why? This movie is serious enough. You don't need to have her as the comic relief alongside Martin Freeman. I'm sorry. You could have cut all that stuff out and just made it simply about the conflict with Wakanda and the underwater city.
Well, see,
So
that's where I feel like that's where it's plugged into the phase. That was where Marvel was like,
that's, yeah,
"Now
to
it's
try to
connected."
get it all connected. You're right.
Exactly. My thing is, I felt like this was. I'm sure they're gonna bring the character back, but this could have just ended the Black Panther reign in the Marvel universe
Yeah.
because of the way it ended. Like, this is like its own standalone story. Okay, this is how we're gonna take it out. Obviously, since it's making money, this isn't gonna be the last one.
Of course.
And my thing with the movie now, okay, a little nitpick. Now he doesn't like the surface level, but he had a suit already for Shuri so she could see the underwater king.
That didn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, I was like, okay, that's very convenient. It gave me that Us movie vibe where it's like, wait, they're never supposed to reach the surface, but there's an escalator.
Mhm.
It's like it was like it's a nitpick, but still, it's just like okay, I'll let it go for the overall reach of the movie. But I mean, I like the movie also, which I have no problem with this. But when they kind of implied that now Danae's character is a lesbian, it was like that came out of nowhere. No build up. It was just like we see her talk to that character once before, visiting her at her house, and then all of a sudden, they're having a party later, and then they're like all loving with each other. It's like, where'd that come from?
And that's been happening a lot with Disney films lately, even going back to something like Jungle Cruise of all films, where I think the brother of Emily Blunt, he has like a whole line where he talks about, oh, they don't accept me for who I love or something like that. And it's like, okay, you're going to have gay characters in a film. I'm not gay. Let's just put that out there. I am straight as a motherfucker. But no, I'm just like, if the character is gay, that's who they are. You don't need to force feed it just so you can check off a box. If she's a lesbian, she's a lesbian. Why do we have to like have that moment to make it seem so like we're trying to appease to that audience? I don't understand that.
Well, I agree. My thing was I have like no problem with that scene. I just want it eased in a little bit more instead of it seeming very awkward all of a sudden.
Right.
Like wait, what?
Because that's like with the Rise of Skywalker. Like at the end, there's like a 2-second scene with like 2 rebel women kissing each other, and it's just like thrown in like almost like a flash frame. It wasn't needed.
I mean, I am all for representation, but I just thought it was very odd. But Wakanda Forever, like I said, I'm always going to have a love of the movies and the character. And of course, Chadwick Boseman overall.
Yes.
But I really enjoyed the film, and I liked kind of like you could also sort of look at Submariner or Namor. You could look at that as a people of color of Spanish descent.
Mm-hmm.
With African Americans, so you could always see that like fighting side by side, and again fighting against each other. When now at the end they kind of realize eventually, as Namor says, that they'll have to team up to go against the man. So in its own like way, it's sort of like, oh my god, kind of like modern like politics and blaxploitation. Only we're opening up the realm. I'm like, hey, next, let's have them. What's his name? Shang-Chi. All of us together.
To fight Dr. Doom. It's happening.
Okay.
He's not in the movie, so that's not a spoiler. But that's where they're building to.
Well, I like Dr. Doom as a character either way. One of my favorite villains of all time, next to Alan Rickman in Die Hard.
Still have not gotten him right on screen yet, but I believe they will.
I hate to say it, I kind of liked what they were trying to do in that horrible Fantastic Four movie with Dr.
Doom.
Yeah, I liked that version of Doctor a lot more than Julian McCann's original version.
Well, he was just Euro trash.
Yeah, but at least in the sequel, there was reasoning, there was power, there was blood. There will be blood. And that's the only part of Fantastic Four reboot that I enjoyed. I'm like, there's blood! Finally! We're killing characters!
I have no memory of that film.
Oh, I have many memories. Not many good. And it's a movie of ideas. But either way, would you recommend Black Panther Wakanda Forever?
It's a good movie. I do recommend it, yes.
And I also recommend it. And I'm even going to go as far as say, definitely see it in theaters. And I think it's more powerful watching it.
Yeah, than to wait for it on Disney Plus. I agree.
Yes. My only problem, I had a horrible audience full of teenagers who talked through it. And so that might be the only reason, if I did see it in theaters again, why I would go see it in theaters again. So I can be
Yeah,
like,
my
let
audience
me.
did not respond at all.
Oh, I don't know which would be better, actually.
Well,
Mine
look,
was.
when she came out in the suit, nobody clapped.
Oh, see, mine, they did. They liked Angela Bassett's, in front of the UN scene, too. Um, so that is Wakanda Forever. A movie, flawed as it may be, is definitely worth it.
Yeah.
Now, let's go in the totally opposite direction and talk about Weird, the Al Yankovic story, available on the Roku channel, which is free to watch. I'm not going to say the channel's free, but it is free to watch this movie. Look, it's directed by Eric Appel. It stars Daniel Radcliffe and has many cameos by comedic superstars. Some you'll recognize, some you won't even know who are in the film. Conan O'Brien. Weird Al Yankovic himself is in the movie playing a role. Look, this is basically UHF 2. Some of it might be biographical, but a lot of this movie is a spoof of a biofilm. And, like his affair with Madonna, who gets him to drink. This is a fun movie. You can't really take too much of anything in here seriously. And I applaud Daniel Radcliffe for just throwing himself totally into the role. I see this is a movie that's made with care, which is different from all those like spoof movies like Meet the Spartans, where it's like, not only are we going to spoof the movie and the genre, but we're going to take everything that happened that year and make fun of it, anything in pop culture. This is just generally like Airplane, just a wacky comedy that is a spoof of biofilm, but also let's throw in a bunch of jokes that make no sense or is supremely weird, like Madonna as the villain and who ends up, spoiler, running a drug cartel.
With Pablo Escobar.
Exactly. And another one, Weird Al is assassinated in this film. It's just, and these aren't even major spoilers. You can still enjoy the film knowing these. I had a lot of fun with it, like spotting the cameos, the ridiculous nature, like the disapproving father who really has no reason, and the beating of the accordion salesman, Pablo Escobar as a supporting character, the band, him having a band. Michael Jackson stealing Beat It from his original Eat It. It's just a wacky good film. If you're a fan of Weird Al, you're going to enjoy the film. And if you're not a fan of Weird Al, why aren't you?
Yeah.
Because even I grew up with him and I loved his music, his songs, spoofs, even his original Dare to Be Stupid. Andre, since you saw this first and recommended it to me, how did you feel about Weird, the Al Yankovic story?
I've been a Weird Al fan for years, since I was a kid with Eat It and Fat. Amish Paradise was one of my favorites. Yeah, I mean, he's freaking awesome, Weird Al. So it's weird for me because at first I did take the movie kind of seriously. I thought it was going to be, yes, it would be comedic, but still be like a biopic because I knew the story about my Bologna and signing with Scotty Brothers and all that stuff. And being Dr. Demento, discovering him. So that there's a good portion of it that is true. And then there's the absurd parts. But then I had to remember, well, wait a minute. I watched Behind the Music many years ago when I did an episode of Weird Al. And the whole thing about it was there's nothing controversial about him. The worst thing that ever happened was when Coolio got upset when he spoofed off Gangster's Paradise with Amish Paradise and tried to sue him. That was like the worst thing that ever happened. But then once I realized that, I said, okay, yeah, I know exactly what he's doing. This is a better version of Walk Hard, where he's taking all the tropes of all the music biopics and he's going way over the top. So you could see Daniel Radcliffe not only play Weird Al really well, but Evan Rachel Wood totally going over
Oh
the
yeah.
top as Madonna and doing really well with it too. Like the mannerisms and her
Hmm.
whole persona is 100% there. And the crazy cameos, Weird Al himself playing one of the Scotty brothers. I mean, this is a movie that after a while, once you check your brain out the door, I just said, you know what, this is actually really fun, and I'm having a good time, and I'm just waiting to see how crazy this shit's gonna get. And even the part where he gets the revelation to do Eat It, and they're like, oh yeah, this Michael Jackson guy, he stole your song. That was great. So overall, a fun movie made by a very talented and fun guy, and just I had a blast with it.
So you would definitely recommend it.
Absolutely.
I agree with you. I even like the scene of Coolio fuming and all
Yes.
he performs it's very nice.
I thought he'd be the one to try to assassinate him.
Exactly. That was the generally laugh out loud moment I had during the movie. So definitely recommend. So since we're dealing with the ridiculous, let's talk about a little movie that had a lot of buzz and behind the scenes drama called Don't Worry, Darling. Directed by Olivia Wilde, who also co-stars in it, and starring Florence Pugh, Harry Styles, Chris Pine, and I mean, let's face it, those are the main stars. But okay, this movie is where a husband and wife move to this community. Well, already are residents in this community. And one character, of course, the black girl, starts seeming crazy and questioning everything around them. And then Florence Pugh's character starts having visions and starts questioning. And then we learn all that is happening might be as it, but might not be as is. First thing I'm going to say, this is very Stepford Wives-esque, and like it reminds me of not wanting to be a remake of it, but close enough that you could be like, this is family, this is a cousin. And it's a film I'm shocked only cost $35 million because it looks great. You know, the production values are great. But it's one of those much ado about nothing. Like, this story doesn't need to be as, or at least the production doesn't need to be as big to tell the story they're trying to tell. It's a little predictable. It's not exactly what you expect, but you know, hey, something's not right here. Harry Styles lacks as an actor, and I could see if the stories were true of Florence Pugh not being as impressed when you have Shia LaBeouf and then you get Harry Styles. But then again, I can't exactly see Shia LaBeouf playing the role either. No. You know, he's more of an aggressive actor, not the I didn't know or I'm sensitive, a stooge type.
He couldn't do that tap dance scene.
Yeah, you never know. Shia LaBeouf could have secretly been taking
the Transformers one would have done it, but not the guy that did that movie where he's like a Latino gangbanger.
No, though I would have put Shia LaBeouf more in the Chris Pine role. You know, I can see that more. But I mean, for all the controversy that was said and done, it really doesn't help the movie because the movie isn't that noteworthy. You know, it's like an extended episode of Black Mirror, basically. Yep. And then when we get the revelation, it's sort of, that's where you can see the feminist spin on the film, which I feel like is what Olivia Wilde and her screenwriter of Booksmart might have brought in more that wasn't maybe in the original script. And so again, I've never read the original versus the updated script, so I don't know. But I know when it originally was written, it was on the blacklist. And I doubt it read how it read when you watch the movie. Because reading it, it's like, this seems kind of watered down and some kind of male oppression, feminist, texture. And this film proved to me, I think Olivia Wilde can direct well. And I think she's good at visuals. Acting, depending on what material you're working with, because Booksmart I loved. but the acting here, and what movie was she supposed to direct after this? Was it a Star Wars or a Madam Web movie?
She
Which
was
one?
going to do a Spider-Man spin-off movie that Kevin Feige was going to produce, but it was never officially. And I think they announced it, but they didn't say what movie it was going to be. The rumor was Spider-Woman.
I could see just from the production value of this film giving her it, hopefully keeping it in, just like Elizabeth Banks with Charlie's Angels, which I didn't love, but there were aspects of the direction I liked. And so with both of them, I think that they can be good directors. It just depends on the material. And I felt like here, Olivia Wilde and her screenwriter were doubling down on a message film that did, instead of it being a genre film. And that is ultimately my final assessment of the movie. Again, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's just me. But I would not recommend even watching on streaming. I'm like, this isn't a movie you need to see. I mean, if it's on and nothing else is on, check it out. But I wasn't really into it. Even the erotic scenes, I was just like, How did you feel about Don't Worry, Darling?
Yeah, this was a very strange experience because on one hand, there was some amazing production design, some really amazing cinematography. Her use of soundtrack was really amazing. And costumes, I mean, pretty much in terms of the overall production, it looked phenomenal. Even the way like it was edited and when she goes into the mysterious building that all the guys work at, and then you have that big revelation midway through. I thought that was really well done. That said, though, I agree with you on the premise. It just didn't feel right. It felt like there was an agenda, but then it was also like a piss poor attempt to try to do the Truman Show and that certain Matthew McConaughey movie we just referred to. Same thing, because something didn't seem quite right. That all these guys drive to the same place every day. Nobody knows what they do. And then you have like that weird exchange at the dinner table between Florence Pugh and Chris Pine that just also kind of strikes me as icky. I just I think Olivia Wilde has talent as a director, but
Mhm.
this was a movie where she was trying to like force a certain Me Too message. Once you get to that big twist, and it kind of falls flat and becomes something that you just like you want to throw your popcorn at the screen because it's that bad. And
Boo.
and yeah, all for all the controversy that came out of it, it probably wasn't even worth it because just watching this film, it's much like female Ghostbusters. It's like any other movie that has that controversy going in, where everybody's in an uproar, and then you see the movie. It's like we're fighting over everything for this in public.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, this is a waste of time. So I don't recommend this one. It's just
No, the behind the scenes stories were more interesting than the actual movie.
you could make a movie or like that Bonfire to Vanities podcast, do something like that for this film than that.
Ryan Murphy, if you need a feud movie for your next season, this is it for you.
Keep it away from the people that did The Offer because they did that shit cheap.
I didn't see it, so I can't talk. Next, we're going to go with a rather surprising movie of the year, Barbarian, written and directed by Zach Krieger, one of the whitest kids you know sketch comedy group. And Barbarian, this is a movie that's hard to not spoil because even the trailer starts out one way, and then the second half of the film is way totally different. I will say I feel like the movie was inventive. And I don't know. Should we just talk about it in general with the spoilers?
Let's talk about it because it kind of fits with Don't Worry, Darling.
Okay, this is a movie that stays inventive, low budget. I mean, it's not a perfect movie because it always has that, why did you just leave after this happened? But I will say it stays inventive. It shows its three acts clearly, just when something seems to be revealed, then we go back or we switch to another story and another character coming into it and their point of view. Having said that, even though I hated his character, it's Justin Long steals the fucking movie.
Yes.
This is the Justin Long I like, when he can be funny yet versatile. And I like how they kind of, you think he's the trusted protagonist, then he does something that is just so abysmal that you're like, oh, this dude, fuck this guy. And then you think he's gonna like redeem himself, and he doesn't. You know, if anything, he does something just as bad, and has a comeuppance for it. And you know, there's not that many characters introduced, and nothing is 100% explained. You kind of get hints as to what is happening and what. The only thing that's really weird in this film is, I understand, you know, inbreeding, but how does one become a mutant? It's, you know, from inbreeding with super strength, you know, and movie monster. And I can understand the detractors, how they might feel about the movie. But all I will say is I like it because one of the things is modern horror sometimes is so basic and follows the same plan that it's not interesting or exciting. This film at least kept you on your toes guessing and not knowing what's going to happen next. And, you know, for some, you know, film people, maybe that's not enough. They want this to be like damn near perfect. But I'm like, compared to the shit we're getting, this is actually one of the better ones. Even if you don't find it quite as noteworthy, I think at least it's a fine example of cinema. Not at its best, but entertaining enough so that it doesn't feel stupid. And at least that's how I viewed Barbarian. What did you think of the movie?
I'm surprised this was directed by the guy that did that Playboy Mansion flick. That
Miss March.
Yeah, Miss March. That kind of strikes me as awkward, but he did a good job. I got to say that. The structure is kind of strange though, because it felt like it was sort of paint by numbers in the beginning, with the girl going into the Airbnb, and then all the weird stuff happens, and then you get the switch to Justin Long's character, and I liked him. I thought acting wise he was fantastic, but did we really have to force feed the Me Too stuff? I just don't know if it was really necessary. I was more interested in what the backstory was with this guy kidnapping these girls and then having this one that turns into a mutant. I mean, I want to know more about that. It felt like a shade of X and Pearl. Like it could have been kind of in the same universe in that sense.
Well, I feel like they included maybe the you know, what you call the Me Too part. I think that was just kind of like a stab at the entertainment field, being a well-liked personality, and then, you know, kind of sexually assaulting, even though he thought it was like, oh yeah, it was just, you know, a regular thing because we had maybe fooled around before, and now she's calling it rape and all that. Because even when his friend is asking him like, yo, what really happened? He still, you can see him thinking like maybe he's even having doubts about like, was it consensual? You know, and then in the end, you know, the big reveal about, you know, the whole situation. But I liked it. Well, obviously the structure of it was done on purpose so that we can keep, you know, being a little more mysterious. Because if it played chronologically, you'd be like, oh, whatever. Yeah. And, you know, like, I like Georgina Campbell in the lead. You know, I will admit, when I first saw the trailer, for some odd reason, I thought it was Rosario Dawson at first.
Like it, yeah.
But I was like, oh, it's Georgina Campbell. Or it's not Rosario Dawson. Oh, there goes the star power. But I ended up liking the movie. Like I said, I really enjoyed it for what it was. I'm glad for once it wasn't spoiled online for me, so I could actually, you know, get the surprise as they happen. I don't know if I would have enjoyed it as much in a theater, since I saw it on streaming. I waited, but I would say I probably would have given it a chance in the theater. One of my favorite little parts of the movie of detail, Justin Long discovering the murder room, or what looks like the murder room, and he's more interested, what's this square footage? You know, this extra that I can put the house on the market for. That I liked. Like little details like that I enjoy. So would you recommend Barbarian?
Yes.
I definitely would too. Did you like it more than Bodies, Bodies, Bodies?
Actually, I did like it more Bodies, Bodies, Bodies because it
Okay.
didn't have a bullshit twist.
Okay. I like the movie. I'm giving it a recommendation. The old homeless dude. Really?
Yeah, it was a little much.
Exactly. Oh, and I give it points for gore, but not being violent when it didn't have to be. And so I'll give it that. And finally, we end with supposedly, at least the last of the Jamie Lee Curtis versions, Halloween Ends, directed by David Gordon Green, where once again, Michael Myers is involved. So the Corey show that we'll call this movie, which it basically is, because it has a great, interesting opening, but then we keep getting more of Corey, and you're like, where the fuck is Michael Myers in this movie? Who comes in halfway through, living in the sewer, and then it becomes kind of Fallen, where I'm going to pass this dark secret on to you, but meanwhile, I'm going to go out and kill some people too. And Jamie Lee Curtis's character being more freewheeling, but then one of the survivors from the last movie saying, how can you go out and live your life when, and look at what Michael Myers did. It's not like she unleashed him, That was my comment watching the movie. And then we watch as Corey gets picked on by band geeks from high school of all people. I was like, like, dudes, who's writing this movie? And Corey gets involved with Jamie Lee Curtis's granddaughter who, is trying to get over her mother's death and then is passed over for a promotion with the most dick of doctors. And all these side stories and then Corey's mom's kind of a bitch. And then his overweight stepfather is kind of sympathetic, but they just kill him off of the meanest way. And then for some odd reason, even the radio DJ is kind of an asshole. Yeah. Like everybody who survived to this movie is kind of an asshole. So that you're not really like feeling bad when they're murdered. It's like, And Corey, who I guess has had this dark secret because some kid locked him in a closet and he opened the door, is even like, no offense, even I was kind of hoping the mother of the dead kid died because he was like, she was attacking him for no reason. It's just a mess. Notice in all of this, I haven't brought up Michael Myers that much. That's the way this movie is because Corey's his co-conspirator. No offense, this felt like this could have been the Rob Zombie sequel that we never got. Because I'm like, who the fuck is Corey? Because he's who this movie's based around. Needless to say, not a big fan of this movie. Glad I saw it. I didn't have to pay for it. And I'm like, this is how you end? This is... Even I can't say the last Dark Knight movie was this disappointing as this film was. Obviously, non-recommendation for me, even though I liked them bring back some of the characters from part 2. And I'm just going to say, I liked the last movie way more than I like this movie. Because at least that film continued, had violence. I just consider it the violent Halloween film. Because this film, while it had his death, barely violent because most of the people got killed by one another. So, yeah, okay, I'm done. That's my review of Halloween Ends. What did you think of Halloween Ends, Andre?
I'm going to give this some context. So in the ancient times called the 2000s, there was a video game called Metal Gear Solid 2. And this was the follow-up to probably one of the best video games ever made, Metal Gear Solid, and everybody wanted to see where that story was going to go. And you play Solid Snake for the first maybe half hour of the game, 25 minutes if you play it straight. And then the plot completely twists to a new character named Raiden. And you play this Raiden character for the rest of the game. You never play Solid Snake again. In fact, Solid Snake doesn't show up till the very end of the game. And people were pissed off with this because of the lengthy cutscenes, but also the fact that the hero that they followed, whose story they wanted to see play out, is now being completely sidelined for a completely new character that's never been established in any other game. So here's Halloween Ends. And you have a title sequence that looks identical to Halloween 3 Season of the Witch. So I'm watching this thing thinking, oh, maybe they're going to tie into that. Maybe they're going to tie in Michael Myers with those little pumpkin heads from that movie. So now we have some universe building going on, and that movie won't feel so isolated from that. And I try not to read any spoilers. I heard that people were having issues with it, but let me judge it for myself. Michael Myers doesn't kill anybody for an entire hour of this film because all the attention is directed to this Corey boy who's basically accused of killing some kid as a babysitter, or whatever the fuck he did in the beginning. Jamie Lee Curtis is like now writing books and trying to get on with her life, and then ends up crossing paths with this kid who's being bullied and nobody likes him, and the daughter for whatever reason has a weird attraction to him even though he's not macking it to her like that. And then he runs into Michael Myers in the fucking sewer and I guess gains some powers, like it's Jason Goes to Hell, and now he's going to go out and put the mask on and kill people. What the f were they thinking with this film? This was a waste of time. This is a piece of shit. This was Jason Goes to Hell. This was Freddy's Death at the Final Nightmare. This was Jaws the Revenge. Okay? Jaws the fucking Revenge of the Halloween movies. This was complete bullshit. David Gordon Green cannot protect this film. He cannot defend this film. This was a waste of time, and they should have taken that goddamn money and given it to a bunch of homeless kids in Somalia. This movie, no recommendation. Avoid it at all costs.
This movie kind of reminds me when they were trying to do that cult of Michael Myers. I think it was Curse of Michael Myers.
Yes.
It reminded me of that, where they're trying to give that kind of, like, I guess, otherworldliness to it, but it backfired. And I agree with you. I cannot recommend this movie at all.
This makes Halloween 6 look like an Oscar winner.
Yes, everybody involved should be ashamed of themselves for this, or this as the last offering. I could have accepted this as the second movie, and they give me the other movie as the end. I would have been more satisfied. It also had Anthony Michael Hall in it. And then, you know, they even try to shoehorn that romance of Jamie Lee Curtis and the deputy still. And
no offense to Will Patton, but he's not a romantic leading man.
He can be for the older generation.
I think in No Way Out, no.
No, see, to me, I'm like, Will Patton is always that sweet, tough guy. You know.
He could be a sweet, tough guy, or he could just be a complete jackass.
True. I mean, I anytime I think of Will Patton, two movies I think of, neither one are celebrated. One is The Postman. That's one, and the other is Gone in 60 Seconds.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but anytime his name is mentioned, those are the movies I think of. But yeah, this sucked. So I can't recommend this movie at all. Go out and see a better movie like Sissy on Shudder, or even Deathstream. You know, they're not franchise movies, but if you want a satisfying horror film, go with that. And unfortunately, that brings this week's business to an end. But as you know, there is always unfinished business to be done. And I have to ask you folks, have you seen Super? If not, why not? Because it's fucking awesome. Andre, what film would you recommend for the folks?
That's a very good choice. Have you seen Emily the Criminal? If not, why not? Because it's fucking awesome.
I haven't. I have to check that out. And that will end this week's episode, guys. We will see you next time. Please subscribe.
Yes, subscribe today.